Greetings. This is Dr. Joe Green, head pastor of St. Paul's Missionary Baptist Church in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, also the founder of the 2019 movement. And I want to share a couple of thoughts with you. There's a scripture in the Bible that says, "My God shall supply all of my needs according to his riches and glory through Christ Jesus." Now, that's an important scripture. And the reason that's an important scripture is because it deals with a specific psychological foundational principle that human beings have recognized and many times will use for their benefit. Now, what does that mean? Supplying all my needs, right? Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not unto your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him and he will direct your path. These are scriptures that talk about how we can depend on the Lord. The Apostle Paul says, I've never seen the righteous forsaken nor their seed begging bread. It's the trust factor, and it's vitally important that you understand why that is spelled throughout the Bible. Not just because that's who we worship. We worship God and we worship him by believing that he's going to supply all our needs. But when you understand that people recognize certain psychological principles in human beings and they will use them. We talk about the globalists all the time and the God of this world, if you will. And so let me start from the beginning. So the globalists have studied the human psyche, right? A lot of the things that you see going on in the media, and so forth, are part of what's called a psychological operations, or psyops, right? There's psyops that they're performing on the American public, and these psyops actually help to move the public in a certain direction. You heard me talk about the Hegelian dialectic, and before I go any further, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and please hit the notification button. Please hit the share button. As I was saying the other day, if I get up to 1,000 subscribers, then I can start going live on YouTube. And I'd love to go live, and that way we can interact a little bit more. But right now I'm 700 and something subscriptions. So anyway, we got to understand that that there's a psychological operation that's going on. Whether or not it's how they are talking about this coronavirus, or the public, or the panic, and all these other things, how they're telling you to socially distance. And I thought about it today because I was getting something to drink at a place. I don't want to name the name of the place, and I was sitting outside drinking my drink, and a guy came out of the place, and he had on one of those surgical masks, and when we talk about social distancing, we talk about people looking to avoid viruses or germs or whatever. So he had on a surgical mask, which some people are doing. And I know some people have compromised immune systems. I know some people are germophobic. I know all those things are true. Some people may be sick and they don't want to spread anything to anybody else, whatever reason, for whatever reason, he had on a surgical mask. But I thought it was interesting because he was walking out of the store and he had a 12-pack of beer with him, which I kind of chuckled a little bit because I'm thinking, if you really are worried about being sick, you're drinking alcohol. Alcohol isn't really the best thing to keep your body, from healthy. So, but it gets better. So I'm sitting there drinking, and I turn around. He put the beer in his car, and then he takes the mask off and pulls out a cigarette and starts smoking a cigarette. And I was chuckling because I'm thinking, does he not realize that he has a greater possibility of dying from smoking cigarettes than he does from the coronavirus? The actual numbers of people that pass is very low. On a larger scale of things, I would venture to, I would bet, I'm not a betting man, but I would bet that you have a higher chance of dying from smoking cigarettes than you do from catching the coronavirus and dying. So, but anyway, but I thought about that, and I thought about what a great psychological operation is being played on the people of the world, but American people especially. So I'm going to talk about a couple of people, and then I'm going to go through the scriptures to look at how this plays out. One person that you should know is a gentleman by the name of Abraham Maslow. And if you're a psychologist or a sociologist, then Maslow is probably a name that you're familiar with. Maslow came up with this thing called the hierarchy of needs. And the hierarchy of needs is a theory in psychology that he came up with in his 1943 paper called A Theory of Human Motivation. And he subsequently extended the idea to include his observation of humans' innate curiosity. His theories parallel many other theories of human developmental psychology, some which focus on describing the stages of growth in humans. He then decided to create a classification system which reflected on the universal needs of society as its base, and then proceeding to more acquired emotions. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is used to study how humans intrinsically partake in behavioral motivation. Now, what does that mean? I said a lot of words, but basically, there are five basic principles or hierarchies of human needs, and they determine that the vast majority of people, you might have some exception to the rule, but probably 99% of all humans have certain hierarchy of needs. From the time you're a baby till you grow into a mature adult, these are certain things that you have, and I'm going to break them down. So you have psychological needs, which includes air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, and reproduction. You have safety needs, which include personal security, employment, resources, health, and property. You have love and belonging, which is friendship, intimacy, family, sense of connection. You have esteem, which is respect, self-esteem, status, recognition, strength, and freedom. And then at the top of the pyramid of the hierarchy of needs is self-actualization. And self-actualization means you have a desire to become the most that one can be. You can be the best person that you are, your best self, right? And you hear that now a lot of times they're saying, live your best life, or you can become your best self. So, but the reason I brought that up is because when you understand the hierarchy of needs, when they break it down into those things, and it is the development of a person, then if you can tap into those hierarchies, you can kind of anticipate the type of response that you'll get from people. And so when you're talking about what's called groupthink or the masses, how the masses think or groupthink, that's in respect to a society or culture or community, right? So there's certain basic needs that we all pretty much share, and of course, if you can use those to manipulate people, and I'm going somewhere with that, so please bear with me. There's another person that you may or may not have heard of, which his name is B.F. Skinner. B.F. Skinner, he was an American psychologist and behaviorist and author and inventor. And Skinner considered free will an illusion and human action dependent on consequences of previous actions. I'm going to say that again. B.F. Skinner didn't believe that there was a such thing as free will. And so basically with that, they use consequences and reward in order to help to mold or to shape behaviors. So, for instance, if consequences are bad, there's a high chance the action will not be repeated. If the consequences are good, the probability of the action being repeated becomes stronger. And Skinner called the principle of reinforcement. Skinner is what they call, he's a behavioral psychologist, but it's called, I had a developmental psychology course on B.F. Skinner, but it's called, the word escapes me right now. I'm looking through my notes real quick. Operant conditioning is the word I was looking for. Operant conditioning. So B.F. Skinner came up with this idea about operant conditioning, which means you use reward to reinforce behaviors. So in school, for instance, and even in parenting, if there's a behavior that a person has, if a child has a certain behavior that you want to get rid of, then you spank the child, and that negative reinforcement keeps the behavior from being repeated. It's like the criminal justice system. That's what that's supposed to be. The criminal justice system is supposed to be a deterrent, which means if I go to rob a bank, they'll lock me up and put me in jail, and that's supposed to keep me from repeating that behavior. So that's what operant conditioning is, and B.F. Skinner was really he was one of the forerunners of that. Now, just to let you know, the things that Maslow came up with and what Skinner came up with, they're not inventing these things. They studied it and they categorized it. So these are things that from ancient times that they understood. Those who are, consider themselves to be the ruling elite or whatever, they understood those things to a certain degree. And so because of it, they've been using it. But these are two people that categorized it for the Western world and put it in categories. So, so it's important for us to understand it because when you apply those type of philosophies, you can use them to move the public in the direction that you'd like them to. So the last two, or the bottom on the pyramid of the hierarchy of needs, the first one being psychological need and safety needs. Those are two that most people deal with as a child or as a baby, or even love and belonging. So those are three. The three at the bottom are psychological needs, which is air, water, and food. You have safety needs, which is personal security, health, property, employment, and resources, and love and belonging, friendship, intimacy, and family, sense of connection. Those three, I would say, are the core of everyone's personality. So as a baby, you begin to look at those things. That's why a baby, when he wants food, he cries and yells until you give him some food. And he begins to develop and to learn and to understand. It starts off as a physiological need, but then over time, as you mature, you still have the same desire, but you react differently. Hopefully you do. Hopefully you don't start crying if you want some food, or if you have to use the bathroom, you just go ahead and go. Safety needs, so safety and love and belonging are two that are foundational beliefs. So as a baby, you know, when a mother holds a baby up to her breast and feeds him, he feels safety, he feels loving and connection, right? And they did there was an experiment that they did at Harvard. I think it was the Harvard baby experiment, where they took two babies, and one of them they fed it and made sure it was warm, but there was no physical connection with the baby, and the baby began to die literally because of this longing and belonging that is innate inside of us as human beings. And so, these are things that we deal with. So when you deal with on that level, and you understand that that's what people needs, the powers that be have learned to use those things in a way that can get the public as a whole to move in the direction they want them to. Now let me explain to you what I'm saying to you. Whenever whoever takes care of those bottom two needs, the safety and the physiological needs, and whoever takes care of those will command loyalty from you. I'm going to say that again. Whoever takes care of those needs will command loyalty from you. The reason children are so loyal to their mother is because traditionally the mother is the one who takes care of those two bottom needs, and even the third one, love and belonging, or connection, right? So if you have a baby and the mother feeds the baby, changes the baby's clothes, wraps him up, whenever the baby feels distressed, he cries and he's lonely, the mother goes and picks him up and holds him close, and he feels belonging. Whenever that happens, it brings loyalty to you. It brings loyalty to that mother. Now, if you use that from a larger picture, the powers that be understood that, and so they use things like socialism and communism as a way to fulfill those needs to gain loyalty from the people. I'm going to say that again. The powers that be use those through socialism and communism in order to get people to be dependent upon the government and loyal to the government, even at the risk of God. That's why communist/socialist governments, they close churches and take the Bible away. Or if they let the church open, they control what's being said in the churches, because they are the ultimate authority and they command the loyalty of the people. And so people will give up their individual freedoms and rights for the fulfillment of their physiological and safety needs, and that gives them a sense of loving and belonging, right? That's why in the book of 1 Thessalonians 5, it talks about the Antichrist, or the system of the Antichrist. It says in 1 Thessalonians 5, when they yell peace and safety, sudden destruction is upon them. Now, what does that mean? What that means is that there's a time where the masses look to this person in the Antichrist and the Antichrist system to take care of their physiological and safety needs. That's what peace and safety means. when they yell peace and safety, sudden destruction is upon them, and as a woman in travail, and they shall not escape. The book of Revelation, chapter 13, it talks about the great the beast system and the system of the beast that overtakes the world. And it says at one point in time, because they all worship the beast, except for those whose names are written in the Lamb's book of life, and then he'll compel them to take the mark of the beast, and they will not be able to buy or sell unless they take the mark. So why would people buy and sell? Why would they take the mark? They would take the mark because the fear of them not being able to do commerce or purchase food or to participate, buying things for their needs is so overwhelming to them that they willingly take this mark that will lead to their destruction. And so you have to understand that whoever positions themselves as the one who takes care of these two or three, however you want to look at it, hierarchical needs in human beings, actually will command the loyalty and the adoration of the people. So socialism is meant to that. The war on welfare. If you notice how LBJ and the Great Society, the war on poverty, they called it. The war on poverty was set up in a way to take care of the physiological needs of the people in order to garner political loyalty. And that's why that famous quote of LBJ is, and I'm going to paraphrase. He said, he's quoted as saying, I should say, that he was talking about black people in 1960s after the Civil Rights Bill. They implemented what they called the war on poverty, and it really targeted to a great extent blacks and other minority groups and people that were in the poor inner cities. And so they understood that this wouldn't fix the problem of poverty. And when LBJ's supporters, who knew that LBJ was a racist, he's recorded as using the N-word a lot, and he was a Southern Dixiecrat from Texas. And they asked him, why did he flip-flop on the Civil Rights Bill? Because he at first went against the Civil Rights Bill, but then when they changed, he all of a sudden supported it. And because within it, they had what was called the war on poverty. And they said, why did you switch all of a sudden? Why did you do a 180-degree change from your previous position? He says, and I'm paraphrasing, the Negro has become uppity in America, but they have something that they never had before, which was they have a vote now. They can vote to support their uppityness. He says, so we have to give them something, not enough to make a difference, but enough to make them think that we care, so that we will have them voting Democrat for the next 200 years. That's the paraphrase. Now, what does he mean by that? He recognized that if they set up a system that would take care of the physiological needs of a people, it would garner their loyalty, and it gives them the belief that there's safety and security, right? Because you have resources, health insurance, right? On the welfare, you get health insurance. And personal property. So if you live in Section 8, you have a place to live, right? You get food, and also belonging, because you feel like you matter now, right? So they knew that if they stroked that part of the person's personality, they could garner loyalty, and that's the reason why they did what they did. And so understanding when you look at around what's happening, when you look on the news and how they are reinforcing the people, for instance, with the health insurance, socialized medicine, they're really pushing for a universal health plan where you have the what's called a single payer. Single payer means that eventually there will be no private health insurance companies. The government will be in charge of it, right? But when you get there, that'll be controlled. But the people, it gives the people the impression that the government cares about them because they're taking care of their health insurance, their health plan, and so it will make people more loyal to the government. But that loyalty comes at a price. It comes at the risk of being able to worship God, which is why whenever socialism and communism, whenever the government becomes more and more intrusive into the lives of the people, your faith is going to be challenged. You will no longer be able to practice your faith the way you want to. You will not be able to. The family unit will be broke down. Because instead of being dependent on mother and father, people will be dependent on the state, on the government, right? And so let's move up this chain real quick in the next few minutes before I bring this to a close. So the top two are esteem and self-actualization. Esteem and self-actualization. So we dealt with the first three. Now, when you deal with the top two on this pyramid, esteem is respect, self-esteem, status, recognition, and strength. Self-actualization is the desire to become the most that one can be, your best self, right? Being your best self. Now, here's what they did along with this. The reason I brought up B.F. Skinner, positive reinforcement versus negative reinforcement. The reason I brought up Maslow's hierarchy of needs is because when you study the human psyche, they came up with Edward Bernays and the globalists came up with this thing called propaganda or PR. And actually, it goes back to Plato's Republic when what I'm talking to you now, the foundation of what this belief is. But anyway, using the media and using personalities, so entertainers and different things like that, they use that as a way to promote their agenda by reinforcing a person's desire for esteem and self-actualization. Now, what do I mean by that? So what they did is they created this idea of materialism, right? And product selling, product marketing as a way to make you believe that your esteem and your self-actualization is tied in to material things. So for instance, if you're a man and you're watching a Cadillac commercial or Mercedes-Benz commercial, it's very exciting. A lot of times they would use a beautiful woman who's attached to the car. So subconsciously, what that would say is, first of all, if you get a Mercedes-Benz, beautiful women will be attracted to you. Now, I'm not telling you, I'm not making all this up. I'm telling you, this is actually the philosophy behind it. This is actually the foundation. And self-actualization. So I have made it because I have a Mercedes-Benz, right? Or some kind of material thing that I would purchase or I would need in order to give me self-esteem. Nowadays with electronics, with the iPhone. So they make you believe that your life will be so much better if you have an iPhone, right? If you have something like that. And so that drives people to become more materialistic and more entitled to where they believe not only should they have those things, but it belongs to them. It's their right to have it, right? And then they put it in your grasp so you go there. But ultimately it is a vicious cycle that never brings real self-esteem and esteem and self-actualization. It is feigning. So you get on this hamster wheel of pursuing these things, but you will never ever get there. You will never ever achieve that, because if you have a lot of money, then you need more money. If you have a 2020 Cadillac Escalade, in September, they'll roll out the 2021 Escalade and it'll have some new features that they'll tell you you need these new features because you have an old Escalade, man. You have a 2020 or 2019, and that means that you're not up to date. So psychologically, that's what it does. And it's really, really bad in our children because with Disney and the commercials and everything, do you know there was a time where they actually had to pass a law to limit the amount of targeting that advertisers did towards children and product placement because they knew that the children had less of a defense mechanism in their brain and it was harder for them to fight against that. So when a child sees a toy, he doesn't have the same self-esteem. He doesn't have the same building, defense mechanism in his brain for him to limit it, to say, well, I don't really need that. That's why you see a child really cry for a toy. Now, when I first started off with Maslow's hierarchy, he talks about not only are these the 5 hierarchy of needs, but that was part of your development. So you first started with your physiological needs. That was the first thing as a baby you start to address. And then your safety, and then love and belonging, esteem, and self-actualization. So when you put all those together, even in adults, it does affect them, but it is even more impactful in the mind of a child. Which is why, like I said, there was laws that some of the government had to come in at times and limit the how they would market towards children because of the fact that they knew that it was such a strong influence in the human brain. When I was growing up, they used to have these candy cigarettes, and from what I understand, someone told me, and I haven't seen them around anymore, that they banned them. The reason they banned them because the tobacco is such a dangerous drug, and they said that if you give candy cigarettes to a child, you're implanting the thought in his brain that he should smoke cigarettes at a young age, and someone would even start at a younger and younger age. So many different things like that. I don't know if you guys know this, but cigarette ads on television and ads, alcohol ads, no longer show people drinking alcohol. Back in the days, years ago, several years ago, the alcohol advertisers would actually show commercials with people drinking. And they said, no, that's not good because it's implanting a thought in them. And the suggestion can be so strong that it could cause people to have alcohol problems or, or start to smoke cigarettes, and cigarettes are dangerous. So anyway, this is something that has been studied for many years. I want to tell you these things so you can know the signs to look for. And that's why the Bible, there's many scriptures in the Bible where God is addressing this. One in particular, as I bring this to a close, is in Deuteronomy 8. You'll hear me talk about this all the time. And Deuteronomy 8, beginning with verse 1, it says, all the commandments which I command you this day, you shall observe to do, that you may live and multiply and go and possess the land which the Lord swears unto you. And you shall remember all the way which the Lord your God led you 40 years in the wilderness to humble you and to prove you to know what was in your heart, whether you would keep his commandments or not. And he humbled you, and he suffered thee to hunger and fed you manna, right? So he fed them every single day with manna. Now, God is giving them this talk because he's telling them not to forget who their source is, not to forget the one who took care of their wealth, their health, taking care of their needs and their protection, right? He let them know that they could trust him and be loyal to him because he would take care of all the hierarchy of needs that they had. And ultimately, at the top, your self-actualization, your desire to become the most that you can be, comes from God. And that's not a coincidence. It was set up that way. He told them that they didn't get sick for 40 years in the wilderness. He told them that he protected them and kept them safe from all the other nations. He addressed all 5 of their hierarchy of needs. And then he said, and guess what? You will be a royal priesthood and a holy nation unto me, because I have put my name upon you. So he dealt with all their hierarchy of needs because he understands the human condition. And we as the church in this day and this age, we have to be able to look through the schemes and the strategies of the enemy so that we don't get taken advantage of. Because let me tell you what, there are mature Christians and adults that get taken advantage of because of these things happening. For one thing, we get very materialistic even in the churches. We go into debt trying to get the newest, the latest, the best, the biggest, and subconsciously, let me tell you something. People will tell you they don't care about it, but subconsciously you do. The reason that you would need to go get the very new and the best and the, or get the high price designer clothes with the label on it so that other people know and see, hey, he has on a Polo, he has on a Chanel, he has on a Armani suit. He must be somebody, right? He has on a Rolex watch, so he must have made it. He must have really be successful in his life. These are cues that we send not only to other people but to ourselves as well, because many of us have a need and a desire for those things subconsciously because of the fact that these are basic needs that all human beings look for. And I'm going to leave you with this. One of the things that also is very prevalent, whenever people lack personal self-esteem, there's a greater need for outward signs of self-worth. I'm going to say that again. The more a person lacks self-esteem on the inside, the more they have to have outward shows of personal worth for other people to see. What do I mean by that? If you go into the neighborhood, I grew up in the hood, like most people say. I grew up in the hood. If you grew up in the hood, you will see a lot of people that are poor and struggling, but they will have the best and the brightest designer stuff, nice stuff all the time, right? I knew people personally that were on, and I'm not knocking anybody that's on public assistance, but these same people that were on public assistance would go out and spend $150 or $200 on a pair of the latest sneakers for their child because it is a outward show of self-worth when you lack the inward self-worth, right? See, you got to realize that God created you and you're special. You are the best that you can be because God made you that way. You are important to God. And if you're important to God and you get your self-esteem and your self-actualization from God and you trust him for all your physiological, your safety, and your love and belonging needs, right? That's what church is. It's about a community. That's why he says, do not forsake the assembling together with other believers, because that's where you get your love and belonging from, right? And so now when we look at the enemy, the first thing he's trying to do is isolate us and tell us to stay away from each other. Don't touch each other. Because what happens is that helps to uh, take away that part of our hierarchy of needs, and ultimately it leads us open to suggestions from the enemy. That's what commercials are about. They are suggestions and planning inside of you. You can look at a commercial for a food and you will become hungry. You'll say, man, that looks good. Man, I should get something to eat. That is done intentionally. They have studied the human condition and they know how to manipulate us. So keep your eyes wide open so that you don't get taken advantage of by the enemy. And please, please, please be careful when you look at the news or listen to the news, because of the fact that they're using these techniques on you all the time, even in network news. They've been studying you for a long time, and there's a reason why the Bible calls them familiar spirits. This has been Dr. Joe Green, head pastor of St. Paul's Missionary Baptist Church and the founder of the 2019 movement. Until next time, peace and blessings to you. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the notification button so that every time we do a new video, you will be the first to know about it. Peace and blessings to you. Shalom, shalom.